Welcome to Level Up Mechanics. In today's video, we're going to be replacing these old faded headlamps with new headlamps that I purchased off of Amazon. In addition, we'll be upgrading all of the headlamp bulbs to LED bulbs provided by LasFit. If you have any questions, feel free to leave them in the comments below, but let's go ahead and jump into the install. So before installing all of these items, let's go over to see everything that I have to install on the Civic. We obviously have the headlight assemblies that I purchased off of Amazon. These are going to replace the old faded headlamp housing assemblies that are currently on the Honda Civic. In addition, we have 3 sets of LED bulbs, all from LasFit. And let's go and open these now and see what we have. So from right here, we're going to have a pair of 9005 LED bulbs. And these are going to be for the high beam bulbs on the headlamp. And then right here, we're going to have a pair of, I believe the stock bulb for the turn signal is a 7528. However, these bulbs are also compatible as an 1157 bulb or a 2057 bulb. The only concern I have about these bulbs is I want to make sure that they are compatible with the Civic. With the Civic headlamp housing, you actually have a piece inside the turn signal area that sits right in front of the bulb, and so what happens is we need to make sure that these bulbs will actually fit. They may be a little bit longer than the stock incandescent bulbs that are currently equipped on the Honda Civic. So the only way I'm going to know if these are compatible is to install them and make sure that they have enough clearance inside the headlamp housing. And then over here we have our last set of bulbs, which are going to be the 9006 LED bulbs. These are your low beam headlamp bulbs, and both the high beam and the low beam headlamp bulbs run at about 6,000 Kelvin as far as the color of the light is concerned, so it will look a lot whiter than the dim yellowish looking factory halogen bulbs that are equipped on the Honda. So now that we've gone over everything that we'll install today, the first step we're going to need to do is actually to remove the front bumper on the Honda Civic. So let's go ahead and move on with our installation. The first thing we're going to do is remove some trim fasteners that are on top of the grille. You can either use a trim removal tool, or in this case, I'm just going to use my pocket screwdriver. It should do the trick just fine. Next, we're going to loosen the front grille by removing these Allen bolts. It should take a 5mm Allen head socket. Next up, we're going to be removing this Phillips screw. There's going to be one on each side of the front bumper and fender area. And then last but not least, you'll have 8 of these plastic retaining clips running alongside the bottom of the front bumper. If they're old, they're probably going to be a little difficult to get off, and you might end up breaking some. In actuality, I have 10 run along the bottom side of the bumper. However, I broke 2 in the process, so I'm going to have to replace these clips, at least the ones that broke. Now that all of the retaining hardware is removed from the front bumper, I should be able to now remove the bumper from the vehicle. What you'll need to do is just pull back on the side of the bumper right here. It should be held in by a black bracket. It's like a bumper to fender bracket that just clips into these slots. So you'll want to just pull off on one side to unclip it, and then do the same thing on the other side. There. Now the bumper is loose from the fender, and we should be able to take the front bumper off now at this point. So now that the front bumper is off, you will notice that with the headlamp, there is a bracket underneath the headlamp that's attached to it. This bracket also helps to hold the front bumper in place and helps support the front bumper's weight. So you will need to transfer this bracket over to the new headlamp assembly once you replace it. In order to remove the headlamp assembly from the body of the vehicle, it looks like you have 3 10mm bolts that you'll have to remove. So if we go up top right here, you're going to have a 10mm bolt right here, a 10mm bolt in this hole right here. I know it's kind of hard to see, but there is a 10mm bolt inside this core support right here that you'll need to remove. And then you'll also need to remove this 10mm bolt right here at the end of the bracket. So remove these 3 bolts, and then we should be able to pop the headlamp out and unplug the bulbs from the headlamp. Well, it looks like I was wrong. It looks like there is a 4th bolt that is hidden. The last 4th bolt is going to be under the inner side of the headlamp and is going to be that aluminum looking bolt towards the back. It's a 10mm bolt, so you'll need an extension in order to reach that last 4th bolt that is holding the headlamp assembly onto the body. Now, in order to actually remove the headlamp, you're going to need to do quite a bit of wiggling. You're actually going to need to wiggle the headlamp forward and in towards the condenser and the radiator at the same time. And as you can obviously tell, these connectors were kind of a pain to actually take off. I don't know when the last time is that they were actually removed, but a lot of dust had built up inside of them, so it makes it really difficult to actually take them off. Just make sure you're patient. They are plastic, and over time heat can make plastic brittle, so just be very careful when you remove the connectors for the bulbs, and take your time and make small wiggle movements in order to disconnect them off of the bulbs themselves. Here's the comparison of the old headlamp assembly, which is on the right, and the new headlamp assembly, which is on the left. I don't want to take the plastic off until I'm actually ready to install the new headlight onto the vehicle, because it will help protect the lens from accidentally being scratched while we transfer over components. So what we need to do is transfer over the bracket that's on the right headlamp over here and move it over onto the new headlamp, which is on the left. And in order to do that, you're going to need to remove this 10mm bolt right here, and then the other side where it meets the fender, it looks like it should just pop out of place. So while trying to put the bracket on the bottom side of the headlamp, I noticed that these little fasteners, these metal clips right here that came with the headlamp, they didn't line up with the holes in the plastic all that great. So I had to transfer over the old clips from the old headlamp onto the new headlamp assembly, and those clips line up just perfectly, so I won't run into any problems when I go to bolt the headlamp back onto the body of the vehicle. So as far as the LED bulbs are concerned, again, we have a 9005 bulb or a 9005 bulb. That is our high beam bulb, And that bulb is going to go in the inner part of the headlamp assembly where it's closest to the actual front grille. And then the low beam bulb is a 9006 or a 9006 bulb, and that's going to go into the low beam side. And then we have our low beam turn signal bulb right here, which we'll install as well. Alright, now that I have all 3 LED bulbs properly installed, we can put the headlamp back onto the vehicle. I will let you know that for the turn signal, this 7528, or otherwise known as like an 1157 bulb, does actually fit into the headlamp housing, and there is enough clearance between the bulb and the little plastic piece inside the turn signal, so it does not touch and hopefully should be compatible with the headlamp housing. Let's go ahead and get this headlamp assembly installed onto the vehicle so we can compare the old and the new headlamps. Now that the headlamps are installed onto the vehicle, before we put everything else together, we still have to do the passenger side, of course, but more importantly, we need to test the LED bulbs to make sure they actually work. Since they are LED bulbs, if you accidentally plug them in backwards, they will not operate, and there is a plus and minus symbol on each bulb connector to indicate a positive side and a negative side. The connectors can be flipped accidentally, so it's good to test the bulbs before you actually put everything back together to make sure that they work, and then once verified that they're working correctly, you could put everything back together at that point. Alright guys, everything's put back together now. Don't mind the fact that the chrome grille is currently removed. I am actually doing another video on the chrome grille. I'm going to modify it. I figured I'd take it off now since I had the front bumper off for this video. So now that the headlamps are installed with all new LED bulbs from LasFit, I am going to show you guys a nighttime comparison between the old factory bulbs and the factory headlamps that were faded and oxidized versus the new headlamps that are from Amazon and the new LED LasFit bulbs that are installed for the headlamps. Alright guys, that's going to do it for this video. If you have any questions, as always, just leave them down below and I'll get to them as soon as I can. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe, and I'll see you guys in the next video. Later.